Hello everyone, this is Shannon from That's So Po, and today I'm doing week 33 of my 2020 reads. This week I finished a buddy read, which was awesome. I read 2 books of manga, and then I also read a really amazing short story collection. So the book that I buddy read was The Beautiful Ones by Silvia Moreno-Garcia, which I buddy read with Cynthia at BookWhimsy, who I will link below, which was such a great experience. I've buddy read things before with Cynthia, it's always good, but this especially was cool because she is a historian focusing on especially France and kind of women's rights and things like that, and that's exactly what this story was. So this story is sort of an alternate reality version of the Belle Epoque in France. So in this version, it's almost like France, except that telekinesis is a real thing. And we follow a couple of characters. Hector, who is a performing telekinetic person. He can move things with his mind, and 2 women. Valerie is one of the women, and she is someone that he fell in love with when he was young, but she came from a very prestigious family line, and she had to marry for money and to kind of help her family out, so they weren't able to be together. There's also Nina, who is Valerie's younger cousin by marriage, who comes to stay with Valerie and her husband and attend the season. Hector has returned to the city after 10 years absence, kind of wanting to reconnect with Valerie despite her being married, but instead ends up courting Nina just so that he can get close to Valerie. Nina, however, falls deeply in love with him. So the story proceeds from there, and there is quite a bit of emotional turmoil and melodrama, which wasn't so much my thing, but I did really like the atmosphere and a lot of the themes that were addressed in this story, especially those of this sort of changing mores of society. Cynthia talked about how really the Belle Epoque was this huge turning point in France, where you're going from the old version of society to the new. And so much of this was about that. So much of this was about change in the way that society operates, but also about the strictures of society and about the limitations on the choices and the options that women have and how that can affect them and how they can react to that. Nina and Valerie are very much in contrast with one another here, where Nina represents this sort of youthful naivete and also hope, and Valerie represents sort of the old guard and the bitterness of having to fall in line, and really it's the strictures of society are very much represented in her. So I liked a lot of those things. I especially really empathized with Valerie's character. She's somebody who has so much anger and so much bitterness over the lack of control that she has in her life. She makes a lot of very bad choices because of that, and she's a little bit of a villain, but I really liked her character. And I think that this book followed some very traditional lines as far as kind of romance stories go. But I think that given the other books that I've read by Silvia Moreno-Garcia, which sort of flip tropes on their head and really explore different types of endings, I would have liked to have seen a different ending with this book, because I thought that there was so much potential to explore something else, other non-traditional options for the characters, and especially Valerie. I would have liked to have seen a different ending for her. So overall, the story was enjoyable, but a little bit too typical for me, and didn't go as far as I think it could have in terms of allowing the women to have really interesting choices in the end. So I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next, I read 2 volumes of a manga, Ojisama to Neko, or A Man and His Cat, by Umi Sakurai. This is a series that I heard about from Reija at the book Finch, who I will link below, and also they did a video reviewing this series, so I will go ahead and link that video below if you want to know more about it. But basically it is about an older man who has lost his wife and decides that he's going to get a cat. And so he goes to the pet store, and the cat that he chooses is a cat that nobody else wants. And this cat, Fukumaru, is in this man's eyes, a very adorable cat, but in everybody else's eyes, not so adorable. And it's all about the relationship that they have and how each of them is sort of overcoming this grief and sadness. For Fukumaru, the whole being abandoned and unloved for so long, and for the man, it's this loss of his wife and not knowing how to connect. So it's got a lot of cuteness. I think sometimes it can get a little bit overly cutesy, but it is a sweet story, and especially the second volume, I think, really went deeper into the backstory of the characters, and that was quite good. The other thing that I think perhaps won't really bother people if they read it in English, but reading it in Japanese sort of got to me, was that the way that the cat Fukumaru speaks is a little overly cutesy. So in Japanese, the sound that cats make, the meow sound, is nya. And so what this story does is that every time Fukumaru speaks, anytime he would have usually used the sound na, it's changed to nya, which once or twice, okay, cute, but it got a little excessive. I will put a picture with some highlights of all of the nyas on a single page, and just maybe because I'm not a native speaker, but it was a little annoying. So overall, it was a cute series. I gave the first volume 3.5 stars, and the second volume, since it did go deeper into the emotions and backstory, I gave 4 stars. And then lastly, I read a short story collection, What It Means When a Man Falls from the Sky, by Lesley, Nneka, Arimah, as part of my August priority, which is African authors, since Arimah is a Nigerian British American author. So this story collection blew me away. Seriously, such good stories. I really, really loved these. They are very dark though, really very grim in a lot of the ways that they portray reality. This is literary fiction with a couple of speculative fiction stories as well that really focus on issues of the relationships between mothers and daughters, about the way that women are expected to behave, the choices that they have to make, also things about immigration, about poverty. So lots of really interesting themes that are explored in this, and just beautiful writing, even though a lot of it's very heartbreaking. I ended up giving every single story in this 5 stars, and I gave the collection as a whole 5 stars. I absolutely loved it, and I'm gonna have a standalone review coming up this week or next. So if you want to know even more about it, go ahead and check those out. But I really strongly recommend this if you are somebody who likes short stories, because they are so powerful and just, I mean, they broke my heart, but also filled me with so much emotion. So I absolutely highly recommend this short story collection. Okay, so those are all of the books that I read this week. If you guys have read any of these books, you have any thoughts, any ideas, anything you'd like to tell me, any recommendations, anything at all, go ahead and leave me a comment down below.